Hello guys, today we'll see how to input a value and how to extract a value out of the application. For that I am selecting this application where the input is in Fahrenheit and the output is in centigrade. So when I enter a Fahrenheit value, let's say 50, and click on calculate, I get an output 10 degrees Celsius. I need to extract the value 10. At the same time, I should be able to input from my script the value 50 and click calculate. So it's a small exercise, but this exercise will make you clear how to enter a value, how to extract a value, and how to interact with the browser. So I am going to use Selenium Webdriver for that. So this is my Eclipse. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new class under the package exercise. I'll just say Fahrenheit to Celsius. Click on finish. This opens my default template of a class where there is a class name and this says that you are inside a package exercise. That is basically, you can see on the left side pane of this Eclipse. You need to define the entry point to this class. That is, when you compile this code, where should the interpreter start understanding the code from? So the main decides that. So either you can write the entire syntax, that is public static void main string args, on your own, or the shortcut is type main, press control space. I repeat, type main, then press control space. It automatically gives the syntax to you. Now whatever you write inside the main will be getting executed. If a class doesn't have a main, it won't get executed. So make sure guys, if you want to execute a class, right, or whatever you want to get executed, you should put inside a main. So main is the entry point. Before we start writing the code, let's note down the steps that we need to automate. So how many steps do we have? The first step would be to open the application. So I'm going to write open the application. Now when you have seen double slash, it means it is a command. This line of code won't get executed. It's just for an information purpose. What is the next step do we have? The next step would be to enter a value in this field. So let me just say in the Fahrenheit field. Enter the input in Fahrenheit field. What is the next thing to do? The next step would be to click on the calculate button. So I would say click on calculate button. What's the next step we have? The next step is to extract the value from the Celsius field. Extract the value from Celsius field. And once we extract the value, we are going to close the application. So in short, we have 5 steps to execute. Now let's see step by step how to do it. Let's see the first step open the application. How do we do that? I'm going to write one line of code here first. It's Webdriver driver equal to new Firefox driver. Webdriver driver equal to new Firefox driver. What does that mean? Webdriver is an interface, right? And I'm creating a variable driver which points to an instance of new Firefox driver. That is, Firefox driver is responsible for doing any operation on a Firefox browser. So in short, driver is pointing to an instance of Firefox driver. So driver has now capability of doing any interaction or doing any operation on a Firefox browser. Let's say you want to do something on Chrome. I would be only replacing this line of code with Webdriver driver equal to new Chrome driver. Or let's say tomorrow you have Internet Explorer. What I will say is only one line of code change, that is Webdriver driver equal to new Internet Explorer driver. Now this driver now has a capability of doing any operation on a Firefox browser. So I'll just write a small brief about this so that later when you see the video it will be easy. The next would be to launch the URL with the help of what? With the help of driver. Now with the help of driver you can do anything on a Firefox browser, as I said earlier. So I'm going to use driver.get. Driver.get, it means it will try to open any URL which you mention inside the double quotes. So I'm going to say that the URL is, I'm just copy pasting the URL from here. This is the URL of the application. I'm going to say close it into double quotes. So for open the application, we have two steps inside the open the application. That is, one is to create an instance of Firefox driver, and the second is to launch the application. That is basically by giving a URL. Now if you see here, if you can see Firefox driver, right? Firefox driver is shown in red color. What can we do with this? Just keep the mouse on it. You will see a lot of suggestions coming up. Now, Firefox driver for our script or our class to understand. Firefox driver is defined by Selenium, right? And it's in some other location. Now, for our class to understand the Firefox driver, we need to import the Firefox package. So this is a package which we are inserting, which is created by Selenium, and we are importing that package into our class so that our class get all the features what is mentioned inside this Firefox driver. Once we import, you can see here the red mark has gone. Now our class can do anything. Our class has the ability to understand whatever Selenium says with regard to Firefox driver. Now the next thing would be to enter a value in the Fahrenheit field. To enter the value in this field, I need to know what is this field made of. So this is my browser. What I would generally do is, there is an approach using Selenium IDE, but I will tell you an approach where you don't require a Selenium IDE. And this approach is generic across all the browsers. So Selenium IDE mostly works with Firefox, and Yes, there are Selenium IDs which support Fire, Chrome and IE, but they're not that stable. So I'll show you another method which is like stable across all the browsers, and generally developers use the same. So that is not a developer tool. So for that, you just press F12. I repeat, just press F12 on your keyboard. You will be shown the developer tool in the bottom. This is the developer tool. With the help of this developer tool, you can locate or you can find the properties or HTML tag of your element. So here, what I am interested in is this field, right? So what I'll do is, you can see here an arrow. So I'm just going to click on it. My hand symbol is activated. Now I come on the top of the field where I'm interested and I click on it. As soon as I click, you can see the source code for that particular field is displayed to the HTML tag for the particular field is displayed to us. Now if you read out the properties of it, it says input type text, on focus clear fields, max length is an attribute, size is an attribute, value is an attribute, name is an attribute, type is another attribute, and on focus is another attribute. These are all attributes, and the element type is input. I repeat guys, this field, the HTML tag for this field is from this input till the end of the input. And input is the element type. This field type is input, and the attributes are type, on focus, max length, size, value, name. Now in Selenium we give a preference to which attribute we are looking for to find an element. To locate any element in Selenium, we have a preference set in Selenium. So the first preference is ID. If the element has an attribute known as ID, in this case we don't have an ID. If ID was there, I could have seen somewhere like ID equal to something. That would be my highest preference. If an element has an ID, you don't have to worry. It is the best way to locate any element. The second preference is name. If you see in this, do you have a name attribute? Yes, we do have a name attribute 1. That would be my second preference. Let's say name also is not there. We'll go with tag name. And let's say tag name is not there. We go with CSS or XPath. And if it's a link, we have other options like link text or partial link text. So in this case, anyways, our first preference ID is not there, but we do have the second preference, that is name, right? So how do I'm going to use this in my code? I would say web element Fahrenheit equal to driver. Driver is the same driver which we have created. It's an instance of Firefox driver dot find element. I'll explain you what I'm doing in this line of code. So far what happened? I'm saying web element. That is basically to point to an element. I'm creating a variable of type web element, and I'm saying driver in the entire browser find the element by what? As we said, our preference here is by name. So I'm going to say by dot, you can see here name. If you say by dot, what do you see? You see so many things: class name, CSS selector, by ID, by link text, by name, by partial link text, by tag name, by XPath. The same thing which I told just 5 minutes back. So in our case, we have a name. So I'm selecting name. And what is the name that we have? Let me just go back. The name is 1. So give 1 here. And with a semicolon. Now if you see, it's showing me a red mark for web element. What's the reason, guys? It's given a quick fix also. So the reason being, our class is not able to understand what is this web element. So web element is defined again by Selenium. For our class to get the features of web element, what should we do? We should import the package which defines what is web element. I just said import this web element. You can see one line of code is again added on the top, that is import the web element. So whenever you see a red mark, just see the suggestions. You get an idea of what is required. Now this line of code is done. Now it's just what we done with this line of code is just found Selenium, our class has just found the element. We have just found this element. Okay, the element, we have got the element. Now what we need to do in that, we need to enter a value. Let's say I want to enter 50 in that. So I would say Fahrenheit dot send. You can see send keys here. Send keys. I'm going to say 50. This will make sure it enters the value 50 in that. Now guys, I've written two steps. There is another way to write or replace these two steps into one step. So those who are interested, they can see it is like this. I would say driver, the same thing what I've written, I'm just copy pasting, driver dot find element. Here you can say dot send keys and you can say 50 here. You can either have these two lines of code or you can have only this single line of code. It's your choice, but I would suggest you to use or follow this line of code, two lines of code, because it's much more structured. So when I say structured, let's say after writing 500 lines of code, again you want to use, let's say, the particular element, or you want to again enter the value. You will have to write this line of code again. But if you're using this approach, you have to just say Fahrenheit dot send keys. Your code looks short and beautiful. So it's up to you guys. You can either go by these two lines of code or you can use this single line of code. Now both of them mean the same. The only thing is I am saying first locate. So I am saying with this line of code is locate the element and then do an operation on the element. So this is the text box field. So that's why you're saying send keys. Let's say it was a button, you would say dot click. So this is an operation. So there are two steps. In this, it's a single step where you do the entire stuff. So I'm not going to go with this method. Those who are interested, they can go ahead and write this line of code. But I am going to go with much more structured programming. So I'm just saying web element Fahrenheit driver.find element by name. Then I'm going to do an operation on that element. Now, how do I click on the calculate button? It's very simple. And we have already done a similar exercise, that is to enter a value here. Instead of entering, now you have to click on this button. So first step is to locate this element, right? So how do I locate this element? Take this spy, click on the element. Now you see the tag, right? HTML tag for the calculate button. Now if you see what is the element type, the element type is input. What are the attributes we have? Type, on click, value, name. So as we said earlier, we are seeing for ID if the attribute ID is there. We don't see the attribute ID. So our second preference is name. And how do I use my code? I would say first step is to locate the element. How do I locate the element? Web element calculate what is the code? Line of code, driver dot find element. We say by what are we going to find the element? We are going to find the element by name. This is syntax, guys. You don't have to. The syntax is very simple. Driver dot find element. In the driver, we are finding the element with reference to what? By dot name. And what is the name of it? it's convert. So I'm going to say, okay, convert, end with a semicolon. We have located the element with this line of code, but we still need to do an operation on it. How do I do that? Click on calculate button. Now it's different from the earlier operation. In the earlier operation, what we do, on this object we need to enter a value, but on this calculate button we have to click on it. We don't have to enter anything. So I would say this is the object which is trying to point to this element. Now with the help of that object, I'm going to say calculate dot click. So this will make sure that your object is getting clicked or the element is getting clicked. Now what is the next thing? We need to extract the value from the Celsius field. So let's do one thing. We'll do a simple exercise. What we'll do is we will try to do this many lines of code. That is, first is launch the application. Second, enter the value 50. Then click on the calculate button, and what we'll do, one more step we'll just write is we'll not extract the value now. We'll just see all these things are done and we close the application after that. So to close the application, you have to just write the simple line of code, driver.close. It just closes the application. Now we'll just run this line of code, guys. You can see a green color arrow on the top. Okay, just click on this. So it opens the browser. You should enter the value 50 in this field and click on calculate. It will enter the value 50 and clicked on calculate. You saw the value coming up and the driver is closed and the browser is closed. Now this is entering part, clicking the button. Now let's extract a value out of the application. Now how do I do that? First, so to do anything on an element, you have to first locate the element. So first step would be to locate the, locate the element. Now how do I locate the element? I would say web element Celsius equal to again the line of code is driver dot find element by, I don't know, right? What I'll do, I'll go back to the application, take the inspector, come to the field where I'm interested to, click on it. I'll see the set of tags for that particular field. So now let's see this field, how to identify. So here the attributes, the element type is input, the attribute is type, on focus, max length, name is to. So we don't have an ID here. So again, our preference goes to the second preference. So the second preference is the name. How do I say it here? By dot name, open it, and what we are going to say here, it's 2. That's what is written here. The name is 2, so we're writing the same thing. So if you notice carefully, right, to interact with any element, there is one basic step first. That is to find the element. If you see here, we located the element here. For this also we located the element. Here also we located the element. Then what we do next is an operation. Either it can be input to enter an input, or the second would be either to click on it, or the third would be, let's say, to extract a value. Whatever it is, the first step remains the same, to locate the element. Now here what I'm going to do is extract the value. Now how do I extract the value? I would say, now this will always go with the reference of the object that is created in that first step. So this object will be the Celsius dot get attribute. So from a text field, right? From a text field, if you want to extract a value, you have to just write Celsius dot get attribute value. This will extract the value what is there in a text field. Let's say you want to extract the value from this field. What will you say? You will say Fahrenheit dot get attribute. In the brackets you will just say value. Why we use value here? Because value is an attribute of a text field which holds the value what you see in the text box. So it's a standard code, guys. You can just say, let's say Fahrenheit you want to extract, you'll say Fahrenheit dot get attribute, in brackets you say value. Now we are going to extract the value from Celsius, so that's why we are saying Celsius dot get attribute value. Now I need to show this to you, right? So extraction will be happening here, but I need to show this to you what is getting extracted. Is it the right value? So I would just say system out.print.ln. So instead of that I'll just say syso and control space. It automatically comes with this. I just need to put an entire thing, whatever I want to show to the user, I'll just put that inside this bracket. So if you see here, system.out.println, inside the bracket whatever you write would be shown in the console here. You see you see in the bottom a white screen. Currently my cursor is there. There if you see, it's completely blank, but when I run my script, whatever output comes from the script would be shown in this console. So system out.println, whatever it shows, it shows or whatever it wants to show would be coming into this console. Okay, we see an error here. What is that? It's because it's not ending with semicolon. Now our entire script is ready. Let's see whether we are getting a value or not. So ideally we should be getting a value. So when we enter a value 50 and click on calculate, we should be extracting the value 10 from the application and showing that in our console. Let's see that. So the application is open. You should enter now 50 and click on calculate. It entered 50, clicked on calculate. Now if you see in the console, we have the value 10. So we have extracted the value. So in short, guys, let me iterate this code. Let me iterate the code. So what we did is we created a default template of the class. Then we added the main statement so that whatever you write inside the main only gets executed. It's always like that, guys. So main is an entry point to your code. So make sure whatever you want to get executed should be inside the main. If you don't have a main, try to execute your code, it won't execute. Now the next line of code was to open an application. For that we used Webdriver driver, new Firefox driver. It was to create an instance of Firefox driver. Firefox driver is responsible to do any operation on Firefox browser. Then we use driver.get this URL to launch a URL. Then we had to do an input on the Fahrenheit field. For that we had to first step is to locate the element, that is the Fahrenheit box, right, and then do an operation on that. So we are saying Fahrenheit, once we create an element, we're referencing to that particular text box. With the help of that reference we are going to say dot send keys. Then we have to click on calculate button. Again we try to locate that element and then we say element dot click. Third one was to extract the output from the Celsius field. For that we have to find the element, right, and the reference was Celsius, and this time we don't have to do an operation on it, rather we have to extract a value. So from a text field, if you want to extract a value, you'll say that element dot get attribute value. Then the last step was to close the application once the operation is done. Hope guys this session was informative. Thank you. Meet you soon.